9:59. Go on then.
Wow.
No, can leave it go. Perfect. Right. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Vincent Community Board meeting for Wednesday, the 5th of June. Apologies, I have none this morning. Tony will be joining us online, so that he doesn't germs, which is very considerate of him, especially given how many are going around at the moment. So hopefully you are not feeling too bad, Tony. Confirmation of minutes from our last meeting on the 30th of April, which you'll find on page 7. Somebody happy to move those? Thank you, Roger. And seconded, Tracy. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Declarations of interest. Page that we're up to on page 13. Just a reminder to regularly check those declarations, make sure they are updated and step aside from anything that you may have a conflict with. Next up, we have the annual plan submitters that wish to be heard. Grant. Welcome.
So I'm see on you.
You're it. Yeah. So
Hey, that's very disappointing.
it is.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you for the opportunity to present, and really the only reason I'm doing this is it all started as a question that I had at one of your drop-in sessions, and they went away to find out some answers and sent back some answers to me, and some staff have answered some of the things, so that's good. That's put things in a bit more perspective than the information in the annual plan had, because as you will see from all of your submitters, it's a little bit hard to figure out what's going on. So with this one, I figure there are some new members in here, so I might just follow on a little bit. So my question was about the Riverside project.
Yep.
And I think it's a great project, but it's a nice to have project, and probably from when it started to now, things have changed quite a bit, and I suspect by the end of tomorrow, nice to haves will be nice to not have when I look at all the submitters tomorrow that you're going to be listening to, some of you will be listening to. So anyway, with the Riverside project, just to recap, and most of you will know this, the project money was approved several years ago and was planned to be spent before now. It has been carried forward to next year's annual plan, so the money doesn't show up in the annual plan, as I found out when you go digging, because it's anything that's carried forward doesn't show up in that plan. And what's in that plan is what's planned, which I find a little bit unusual, that you can't see a whole lot of money that has been carried forward. Anyway, that's another issue. So as I said, in the meantime, things have happened, which I believe, when you look at what your options are, this could give you a win-win-win solution. You save the money, $600,000, 600K, community benefits from the project, and Contact demonstrates that they are trying to comply with their consent conditions. So what has changed to allow this to happen? So just a bit of a recap on what happened up in Cromwell, and I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with this, that the Kaura arm has been silting up, and there's been lots of issues up there, and that the residents of Cromwell in the end formed their own trust to try and resolve this, because they felt they weren't getting satisfaction from either the ORC or CODC. So the trust took Contact Energy to court regarding the Landscape and Visual Amenity and Management Plan, LVAMP for short, which is what I'll abbreviate to if we go through this. So LVAMP for short. So Contact won that legal battle. So these plans are required in both the Kaurara and the Manuhira areas, although most of the emphasis has been on the Cromwell issue. So as a result, in 2020, the ORC issued an abatement notice on Contact Energy related to the LVAMPs. An independent commissioner reviewed the consent conditions and found them lacking. Revised conditions were proposed by Contact and were accepted in March 2023. The new LVAMPs for both areas need to be submitted by the 1st of July 2025, with consultation having taken place before then, obviously with yourselves in both instances. Well, ward's perspective, you'll have a lot of interest in this one. I'm sure the Cromwell ward up there, but equally the council. So one of the conditions in the document, I'll quote. So this is the new conditions that have now been approved last year by the ORC. So in that, Contact state, the updated conditions provide the opportunity for Contact to go above and beyond their quotes where required through the identification of new and specific projects for the enhancement of amenity in the area covered by the LVAMP. There's a lot of other words in the whole document. I felt that one was quite a critical one because it's very pertinent to this project. So the council has the opportunity of being consulted on these plans before they're submitted and ensuring the needs of the community are being realised. Contact now know that the ORC will be monitoring the progress and that inaction is not an option. So there are various issues coming to out here. There's projects that was being proposed are down here. But when you look at what's going on out there, it's the gravel extraction that is required under their consent. It's basically become a gravel pit for them to do with what they like. So the gravel extraction zone is spread over both sides of the river, both River Street and Graveyard Gully. I believe this needs to be reviewed. The visual state of both areas need to be improved. The visual state of the Linger and Die needs to be improved. When compared to the old pool area opposite, it looks rather forlorn.
Grant, I'll just let you know, your 5 minutes is up, but
Right.
because you've taken the time to come and see us and we don't have, as you pointed out, a massive queue behind you, I'm happy for you to carry on. Just recognising that a lot of that applies to the Otago Regional Council consent conditions, which we don't control. But if you want to, just finish up you on.
You don't control them, but you are consulted through them, and I'm sure I'll listen to. You're one of the consulting parties. So there's a landscape plan that they have to do for out there, and I believe it needs to take into account the requirements of the community and the impact the sedimentation extraction has, and this needs to be developed further. Now, if you don't, I think it's a good project for the ward to be involved in, but if you're not interested in what's going out in the backyard, then the option will be that we'll end up doing what has happened in Cromwell, the Lake Dunstan Charitable Trust, who has raised nearly $1 million to do planting up there. There's been nothing happening up here, or very little. There's a little bit happened in the Linger and Die when they first put the gravel in there. So the other thing I'd note in the submission, I note the comments come back from the staff that because the money has been carried over, it's not actually in the plan, therefore it doesn't matter. Well, I'd argue that if the money hasn't been spent, you can still save it. Just because it's sitting in some other bucket some other year, it's not actually shown in that plan. The project's talked about, so it's happening in that year, but the money's not shown that year, which, as I said to you, I find rather strange. So my recommendation would be that you push pause while you look at other avenues of funding to carry out this project. Thank you for your time.
Does anybody
Do you have any questions?
any questions? Yes.
No, I've got a comment, I guess. I'm not sure if I'm going to get daggers from the back of me here. I thank you for your submission, but I'm just wondering so I was part of council, obviously, last term when we went through and the Riverside Park was put out to the community, and the community overwhelmingly said they wanted this project to go ahead. So here we are, we've had, things have gone, the passage of time has happened and everything takes a little bit of time. And now what you're saying is that you'd like us to pause the project when the community has completely told us they want us to do this project. So I'm a little bit confused as to how do you think we would I guess we would be in light of the rest of the community if we said no to a project that we've already said yes to.
Answer that question to you after tomorrow afternoon, after you've listened to all the other submitters, because I've read those submissions. There's a lot of people calling for it to be stopped. It's nice to have. It's not essential. 25% rate, average rate increase is going to catch you a lot of flack tomorrow. You're going to be looking for all sorts of projects to try and trim this back. You're not, but you should be. So I'm giving you an option here, which is a win-win-win. You don't spend the money, someone else does, and the community benefits from it, but you have to wait a little bit while you go through that process. Right. You're not going to get that option with many other projects.
On this, the spending of money and someone else spending the money, and I'm pleased that you highlighted the trust in Cromwell that have raised their own funds, because we also have a trust here who has raised funds for the Riverside Park. This is not just council money going into it. It's money that has been raised from other funders, as well as a number of local businesses who've put their own money into it. What would you say to them about what the work that they have done?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, there's 600,000 of council money there. Over.
That money came from MB in the form of a grant. That's not.
There's about 3 different parcels in there, as I understand it. I stand a bit on that. The way that it was explained to me, there's some from CLT, some from MB, and some from the county.
Yeah, so some has, just to through the chair, some has come from MB, you're correct, but the 650 is the not from council. Yeah.
Grant, you say other funders. Have you got anybody particularly in mind who would pay for this? Contact Energy.
That specifically saying that they want to be involved in projects. That's why I read that piece out. That's their words. So until you've explored that, as I said, I would think it's prudent from the council's perspective to push forward and vigorously look at it, because you've got to remember, there's not going to be just the Vincent board looking at any money that they might have. The Cromwell board will be too, because you all know what's going on up there. But these new conditions, when you read through them, what happened and what led up to that, I mean, they got taken to court. They got issued with an abatement notice by the ORC. The ORC's put them on notice. You've got to do a whole lot better than is what they're telling them, than what you've done in the past. I mean, if you look at the LVAMPs or here, all photos and few words. Have you read? Has anyone read the LVAMPs?
I've had brief look through.
Yeah, they're very brief documents. It doesn't take long. They've got to do a much better job than that. It's our backyard out here. And as part of that project going on, it needs to flow all the way through. They have responsibility for what they're doing out there, and they're just using it as a gravel pit. I mean, putting 4 concrete bollards out there after they've finished on River Street to stop, it just looks shocking. And the whole state of what they, and we're expected to live with that now forever while they do their gravel extraction. Yes, they need to do their gravel extraction, and I would argue probably the better place to do it is on the land on the other side, which they also use. And then it allows you to tidy up this whole area. Otherwise, you're going to be faced with them using this as a gravel extraction point because it's convenient. No one's questioned them for as long as they like. I think you need to take a much harder line with what they're doing.
Is there any? My understanding is that conversations around that Riverside Park happen across a broad range of interested parties. It's a tricky site because it's owned by one person and managed by another, and then other parties have an interest, and then our community has an interest. It is a complicated place to be undertaking a project of this size and scale. I think, as Councillor Patterson pointed out, when this was consulted on in the long-term plan last time, the results that came back from the community were overwhelmingly positive and in support of the project. And I recognise that you have highlighted that the financial situation that families in our communities find them in now is quite different from when they were consulted on for that work. And you're right, it will be factored in as a consideration for tomorrow. So I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Grant.
Right. We will now find we are up to page 17. To consider the submissions of the 2024 to 25 annual plan consultation document on matters relating to the Vincent Ward with Christina, Saskia and Susan. Very nice today. Yes, wonderful.
Good morning, members. So a pretty straightforward paper in terms of presentation from us. You'll see that across the list that we did have 150 submissions. We just want to correct that because in the paper we had one that come in late that every part of the analysis of the council. It didn't pertain to the Vincent Ward. It was the TBS Valley one. Of those total 150, 11 submitters have put some thoughts through that pertain to the Vincent Ward for consideration by you all today. In addition to the 11 submitters, there is one staff submission requesting a change in the fee and charge for you to deliberate on that. So we will just hand it over ready for questions and then deliberations amongst yourselves.
Wonderful. Has anybody had any questions relating to this before we go through the submissions? Wonderful. Right. I think, given that we don't have hundreds of pages of them, which is a bit of a shame, that we shall go through them, and would you go through them line by line and have a look through it? All right. So our first submission relates to the Blossom Festival, important to the district as a whole. Contribution from the festival to the festival from council is good. The festival committee itself may need guidance on how they could be more resilient. And the festival obviously brings together people in planning and participating and beneficial for tourism and I think general wellbeing for the whole area. Marty, I just wondered if there were any comments that you would like to make in relation to that submission, given your very close proximity.
Is it appropriate that I can get in contact with Andrew and have a chat with him? Can you pass on his details? Is that doable? Because I think I'd like to invite him to come to a committee meeting and the committee and us discuss his thoughts. And because also I have the committee failed to at its AGM fill all the vacancies on the committee, so I possibly could be Bazan and get him directly involved.
Absolutely. Noted that. Cool. Some of the staff comments related to the grant policy and the reality that VCB funding has gone on for many years, VCB becoming oversubscribed, and whether there was a willingness from this board and this council to consider whether Blossom Festival funding reverted to being aligned with the long-term plan.
Ideally, that's where I'd like to see the Blossom Festival funding sit. It gives surety to the organisation going forward. Coming back and applying every year is a task which both the bean counter and myself don't like doing. We're going, and I think it's important that people understand one of the reasons why we are so affordable to the public is because of that funding. That $24,000 or the $20,000 the Blossom Festival getting this year equates to the discount we offer to locals for admission, because they get a substantial discount on tickets leading up to the event. And the committee's had a conscious decision for many years now. We distribute tickets, free tickets to various community organisations from, community support groups, Presbyterian support services who distribute those tickets, Salvation Army, Living Options. I think from memory last year, we probably gave away 2,500 to 3,000 free entry tickets. So, so the money coming from ratepayers supporting the event, those ratepayers who are paying for it are getting the benefit right back at them, because they do get the discount, which is only available to residents people who go into the shops in Alex to buy the tickets. If you live in Balclutha and you want to get an early bird ticket, you've got to get your cousin in Chapman Road to go and buy them for you, because you can't buy them online. We don't offer the discount out in the district. So it's, and yes, the event is 67 years young this year. It's the longest running event of its kind in the country. It's only had one break, and that was due to COVID. And it draws on average between 15 and 20,000 people into the area, and is our best publicity tour, and highlights Alex and Central Otago. And as our tagline goes, it's by the community for the community.
So, Madam Chair, the process would be to recommend to council to revisit the grants policy, because I remember when the grants policy was made testable, there was lots of conversations across each full board around, it wasn't just Blossom Festival, there are other ones that were line items. So the recommendation would read something like, Sarah, to recommend up to council to revisit the grants policy to enable the Blossom Festival to receive ongoing funding. So, something like that, but it would trigger, council would have to do that via the grants policy, would be my suggestion.
Yep, Tom.
The grants policy is up as the start of the end time and without anything.
Perfect.
So the grants policy that we're reviewing is the community and promotions grants, but you're talking the line item for Blossom is still slightly different.
Yeah.
By that policy.
And it would be potentially part of the LTP conversation.
Correct.
Okay. Do we need to, aside from, do we then not need to recommend that
I would
the grants policy be reviewed, because the review is coming and the LTP is also coming, and we just need to signal to our community that if that's something that you'd like to see,
you could go either way, Madam Chair, but if the board was to recommend to council, it's putting in front of council, that's what this board would like to see as part of the review. If you don't make a recommendation, that's not in front of council as sort of highlighted for them. So on behalf of the board, I would suggest you do make that recommendation.
well, perhaps then if we recommend to the council that the Blossom Festival be considered as a line item as part of LTP discussions for 2025.
Happy to speak on that.
And the grants, as part of the grants policy, as part of the grants policy.
As part of the grants policy review.
Yeah.
That's what's good. On the fly.
Thank you. And Martin will be in touch with that submitter to see if they would like to join the committee. Or just attend a meeting and.
But these come and talk to us, yeah.
Next is the swimming pool in town is very often cold, too cold for the kids to be in there. I would suggest possibly not too cold, but too cold for the parents to be in there with the kids is what I found on occasion. Kids don't seem to feel the cold. Pools are operated within the industry temperature. There was another one there a little bit further down around the swimming pool needing a revamp to encourage adults to want to join children in the water. Does anybody have any comments on either of those two sections?
I've gone to the pool quite a bit with the Mokopuna lately, and I haven't found that. I mean, different people have different experiences. I might have a bit more colouring to people.
Yeah.
No.
I also think we're providing a great facility. Sometimes it is noisy. That's
It's noisy.
the punishment that you get for having had children.
Through the chair, if there is temperature fluctuations, that would definitely be the exception, not the rule, but it's something we do monitor very regularly, because in front of the staff are regular intervals as well. So
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And Madam Chair, the comment about the noise for some swimming pools around the country do close the pools to the general public and open them up for people who can't remember the exact term, who are sensitive to noise or sensitive to large crowds and all that sort of stuff. And they've proven to be quite successful. So some of it all goes with
part of our level of service discussion and LTP.
That's right.
Yeah, absolutely. And probably good to get some feedback from the likes of Living Options and some of those
That's right.
organisations that support our community as to the need and the desire and what that would look like.
Yeah.
To there, I think we're more further on about the removal of pine trees in the Kānaka walkway. So great to see people submitting on something that is proposed and wholeheartedly supporting it from you. Is there any update that you would like to give on this?
It is in for the annual plan as far as timelines concerned. I'm not 100% sure on, what month, but just look over the back there. It'll be in autumn or spring.
No, we're trying to do, yeah, so we can get some contact right there.
So yeah, and echo that, it's great to hear from submitted and something from the plan. Very helpful.
Thanks, Ruth. And next up is our submission from Mr. Campbell, who spoke to us this morning. Has anybody got any questions or comments on that initially?
Yeah, I support what Grant's saying about Manaharakia and Woomba and Dye, that whole area, it's just a garbage dump. And if, look, what the staff are saying, then it's being reviewed, the LVAMP being reviewed next year. I think we need to really put a very strong message through that process, and that they can't carry on with using that area as it is. It is looking like a gravel dump, and it's our back. Grant's quite right. It's our backyard, and if anybody drives around there, it is. And I used to live in Kerry Street, and I know what that area was like. And yes, the consent conditions and for the management that contact have to go in there and literally dredge out the Manaharakia to stop the risk from flooding. But just extracting gravel with no remediation, it's a pretty poor job. So I'd wholeheartedly support staff coming in quite strong on that.
On that, Martin, would this board like to invite Contact to come here to discuss their proposed LVAMP with the board as to the direction that they would like to take? And
it would be very good to hear from them, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, they acknowledge they have an issue in Cromwell, and it's always been acknowledged that a dam like Clyde will cause silting of rivers. It's a fact of, it's what happens. They've done some remedial work up there. I can't see any reason why we shouldn't be treated the same.
Is that going to that? That's the community board would like to invite Contact to attend.
I don't know, I'm sure if you need to make that a recommendation of council. I think that's probably just an action that we can just.
And actually for us to go on steps.
Yeah.
Perfect, thank you.
And it'd be good to get something circulating the current paperwork regarding what their obligations are.
It would be interesting to know whether if the Manaharakia was dredged more regularly, how that would impact potential for insurance premiums around especially around Alexandra, and further up the Manaharakia, because supposedly it is a flood risk right up to the top of the water terrace. So, well, I guess both, but that's how far the insurance is taking.
Yeah.
It's taking things.
And thankfully, our flood banks have been put to the test. Thankfully.
It's one insurance company, I think, it's been that, but it's one too many.
Through the chair, I can actually provide that information. We have received it. Thank you very much, and I can provide that to the board. That we can write down to invite the contact energy.
Thank you.
Also through the board, I can give an update on the Alexandra Riverside Park project as well, being project manager, that we have actually managed to secure external funding to a total of, the updated total as of today, of $625,948. So that's come from a combination of the Tourism Infrastructure Fund, Central Lakes Trust funding, and we just found out the other day that we were successful in a Lotteries Environment and Heritage. We've also got funding applications out with Otago Community Trust at the moment as well. And we've got discussions in the background going with contacting these. So thank you very much for that input as well. So we'll put that as a part of the conversation with them to give a bit more push on the funding application that we're planning to go with them too.
I might just add to that too, and the trust, the Park Trust is also looking at other funding options, whether it involves the community, other businesses, and I know they're working quite hard on that as well, so. Yeah.
Hopefully that will allay some fears around where the money is coming from. There was a indication from that submitter that the project should be paused and the $650,000 not spent, but I do not believe there is any appetite from this board to make that as a recommendation to council, unless I am wrong. Thank you. And good to know that those conversations are happening with Contact, and hopefully those that quoted above and beyond ability will be highlighted.
And we're really working, so we've got that construction partner in place now, and it is that balancing act between how much funding we can achieve, trying to balance that out with not putting too much on what we've said that we've committed to the project, and also what we can achieve as well. So the project team is balancing all that through.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Right, and Parnaka walkway trees, and again, great. Now, we had a submitter with a map there that you'll see on page 21, talking about links and gaps in the network around walking and cycling tracks, some of which we own and some of which we don't. Does anybody want to make comment on that submission?
So it's a nice idea, but money. And so if there's any groups out there that want to volunteer and do it, that'd be great.
Thank you. And for anybody listening online that's not following along, looking at the agenda, it relates specifically to the track known as, I didn't realise that that's what it was known as, the businessman's track, the businessman's track, which runs alongside the river, but on the Alexandra side, and it does go most of the way from the boat ramp here up to the back of the industrial area, really, doesn't it? And it is quite a well-formed track. It's certainly wide and easy for walking and biking, maybe not necessarily for prams or people with limited mobility, but I am confident that we do provide many tracks that are suitable for people who prams, wheelchairs, limited mobility, walking sticks.
Has anyone been in touch with regard to that comment about the volunteers? Do we know?
Yeah.
Right, I'll allow you to make comment on this. Are you volunteering?
No, well, no, I am, yes.
Yeah.
I'm part of the group that is advising the volunteer, so I know Joe Shearing.
Yeah.
And you guys done a lot of work with that track. We've been involved in doing other tracks. We've done quite a few over back. In fact, one of the tracks over on the Matangi station, named after the group, it's called the Old Codgers track. Old Codgers. So, Joe's group, as soon as it gets you a go ahead, they'll be up there building track. Right, across the land.
So, yeah, so that's what they really want is it's council there and they need to outlease it basically.
Yes, that's what he's after.
Does that relate to just that part that's on our land? I'm guessing we can't give blessing to do something on Lindsay's land.
Well, he's looking for an exit that's become difficult. You used to be able to walk up through there and then the transfer station went and build a fence, then someone next door would build a deer fence. So your lovely track goes along there and ends up in the middle of a gravel pit. There's no way out of it other than turn around and go back.
Yeah.
So he has found a little route to get up onto some of your land. You can't go through private land, but he has occasionally found the route to get there. All it needs is to go ahead and they'll be on with this window.
Some people will work through it then, make sure it is our land.
That's what I was just thinking. If there's the possibility for a staff member to be available just to clarify where our land starts and ends, and then I think they're certainly in terms of the land that CODC owns. Is there an enthusiasm from this board to recommend that
Yes.
council that something happen there so that it's not a dead end turnaround?
Through the chair, I think there is from my previous property hat in the Vincent area, there is need to also consult with our waste minimisation, our waste management team, because they fenced the area from memory was to keep people safe and out of the landfill. Yeah, so we just need to bear that in mind, and also the fact that some of it could be in Lynn's where he's proposing. So just a matter of staff working together and seeing whether we can progress that safely for everyone. Perfect.
Yeah, we have CIT, you last mentioned there as well. We have heard something of Joe, and Joe does do some amazing, as many do around Alex on a whole lot of different projects. But I think it is, as footing Christina said, we just continue to work with them and understand what's ours, what's not ours, and see how we can best work with everybody with request the board's blessing.
At this stage, you may wish to consider not a recommendation to council and that staff go away and work on it
Back to us.
and come back to the board. So maybe it's a more a note that staff will go away and work with the submitter on that, and then we'll work it through and it's our land, bring it back and then go to the council.
Perfect. And I guess that would enable us to, if part of it was on Lynn's land, then for the board to indicate their support for the project to Lynn's prior to that authorisation being received. So, no, wonderful. Notice on that. Thank you. And then our final submission relates to the Clyde campground, changing the structure of how the storage fee is currently charged due to increases in expenses. The fee is currently charged at $400 annually in advance, which includes GST, and we would like to make the fee plus GST. Anybody have any issues with that?
No. I think say it's a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer.
Are you happy?
Yeah, I just
You want me to? Right, based on our discussions of those submissions, receives the report and accepts the level of significance, recommends to council to review the grants policy, specifically for the Blossom Festival, to be considered as a line item as part of the long-term plan 2025. Do we need to just?
No, it wasn't a submission,
No.
but should we be putting maybe the stories funding in that same category with the Blossom Festival?
That's a
Is
district
recommended?
function.
as it wasn't a submission, you only
Yes.
need to consider the submissions you have in front of you.
Yeah.
But that will trigger the conversation more broadly around the line items across all the resilience.
And that's, it will come back to us as part of this grants policy discussion anyway at the new year.
Yes.
Perfect. Note that staff investigate the ownership of the area between the businessman's track and the Pines and work with the submitter to progress this project. Do we need to have that come back to us? Ideally.
Yeah.
No,
And report.
and report back to ECB. And recommends to council that the storage fee for the Clyde camp be increased to $400 plus GST for the 2024-25 annual plan. You have a mover, thank you Jaden, seconder, thank you Di. Any further questions or discussion on that? All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your time, Gareth. Date of our next meeting is this week, 5th of June. Monday. So far away, yeah. We are now to, it's the end of the formal meeting at 10:38. Thanks, Sarah. Now going to move into the digitalisation workshop, which remains live streamed. So Tony, you can just stay here for this part. And does anybody need a break before we look at it? Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have opened this with Tim previously, but we'll put it to Peter just to open remarks before we go through the live consent.
So, as a districtisation, you will recall, so long ago, we had the delegation discussion. And the commentary that came back from a number of the community boards was that actually, we feel that's a bit rushed. And what we'd prefer to have is a discussion around district-isation, much like this council did and the boards did when it discussed water and roading back a few years ago, and district-ised those. Took them off the boards and became a district to be funded from the district. You know, it was pretty unequivocal, the commentary that came back from the community boards. So this is what we're having. We're having this district-isation discussion now. The timelines are quite tight in a way, although we have built in time at the front end to meet with the community boards and have this discussion and then enable you to have feedback and that. Because the outcome of this discussion will flow into the long-term plan, the start point of the long-term plan. And so we encourage the community boards to be having that discussion. Digitisation is not about cancelling funding. It's purely, at this point in time, it's looking at the status quo as some activities are ward-based. Should those activities be districtised and be funded from across the district? It's not changing the level of service of any particular activity. It's just saying, instead of rating the ward for it, we'll rate the district for it. Any discussions around levels of service and all that sort of stuff will be for the long-term plan, which is the normal time when you review the levels of service of any activity or all our activities. So it's not a point for this discussion. The other thing too is that you'll recall too that council agreed to bring back the delegation discussion at the end of this year. And so the outcome of the districtisation discussion will have a bearing on that, depending on what council decides to do or not do. And of course, as I've already alluded to, we in October of this year, we will definitely be commencing in earnest the long-term plan. So this conversation, of course, will feed into that, and then we will have an ongoing discussion around levels of service across our activities. And that long-term plan needs to be adopted by the in the June 12 months time. So yeah, and down here, so I'll hand over him for some comments.
Apologies, you're just far too efficient at changing over for me there, so thank you, Peter. Look, for me, there's three big drivers behind this, but the first thing I want to point out is that we are talking about districtisation, the conversation, but it's really about continuing or completing districtisation, because as we'll see in one of the slides, 82% of all our rate money that comes into the council goes out via the council, not the wards. So there's only 18% of the spend, the income, that isn't already districtised. So this isn't a new thing. In fact, this is a very old thing. We districtised our roads last century, literally. We districtised our three waters in the 2015 LTP, which is why we're now looking at continuing. So the reasons behind the continuation are threefold for me. One is the financial situation. Obviously, we're in a situation like every council in New Zealand where the mountain of infrastructure cost in front of us is bigger than we can climb. And when I say that, we are going to get to our debt ceiling, which can then be increased, but then there's a debt ceiling that can't be increased. And with what is currently expected and required of us, whether that changes or not, we don't know, but we can only play with what we've got. What's currently expected and required of us, we will reach that debt ceiling. And when we reach that debt ceiling, what that means is you can no longer spread the cost of your long-term infrastructure out over a debt period. You have to pay it today. And we've got to do whatever we can to manage our money so that that eventuality doesn't happen, or if it does, it's as limited as much as it can be. So that means that literally this table, but not the VCB table, the council table, needs to have a really strong grip on its financial requirements so that we can look at it in the round and go, okay, Ward A wants a new hall, for instance, or they want to do up a hall or something like that. That's currently a ward-based function, but we will know around this table whether or not we have the money to do that, or where it sits in the list of priorities, which unfortunately our priorities are now being dictated to us by the infrastructure demands out of Wellington, not by the needs of our community, and that's just the brutal reality of it. The second part that has triggered this conversation for me is the Cromwell Memorial. For me, in all but name, that building is the Central Otago Event Centre, and I say this boldly in Alexandra, we're not building two of them. There's not going to be in a district of our size another place like that, and I don't believe in my lifetime. Which begs the question, once that building's up and operating, it's going to be estimated at $280 a year on every Cromwell rating unit to pay for the depreciation, the staffing, the insurance, the everything. And whilst Cromwell is paying for it out of the Cromwell funds, in terms of the capital build, it's the ongoing OPEX that's going to, I think, create a degree of unfairness. Now, I say that twofold. One is, if 665 there, there's going to be a truckload of people come from Alexandra and other parts of the district and go to it. And it will be events like that. We'll go there that a lot of us will go and enjoy. So why would Cromwell be the only place paying for its upkeep, maintenance and so forth? But secondly is also a question of fairness. Now, in a discussion we had at the drop-in session in the Maniatoto, I did mention this, and the people there understandably said, why should we be contributing to a Cromwell Hall when we live in Ranfurly? And I totally get that, until I showed them a slide that you will see, which is the cost of roading in the district, which is districtised. And this is why the continuing districtisation is so important, because we've got to look at what's come before, and you'll see this today. Every Maniatoto ratepayer would be paying $2,000 more a year in rates if roading wasn't districtised. So we can't just look at today, we've got to look at what's come before and what's coming next, and when we're talking about fairness. So that's, for me, another trigger. And the third one is simple efficiency. Our finance team at the moment, when they do annual plans, annual reports, and long-term plans, heaven help us, they're doing 5 sets of books. Now, at a business level, and I do look at the council as a business, because if you don't get the business part of it right, all the other stuff goes at custard. At a business level, that doesn't make a lot of sense. It really doesn't, to have 5 sets of books. It would make it a great deal more efficient. One of the other topics that we're looking at today, which is crucially important too, and I've had people say to me, well, what will become of the boards if that, that 18% of funding, if you're not doing that spending? I've even had people say to me, frankly, that this is your way of getting rid of the boards. I want to emphasise that I went from the Vincent Community Board, had a breather, and went to mayor. I've never been a councillor. I'm a big believer in the community boards, absolutely passionate about the community boards remaining and actually being enhanced, and how we can make the connection between the boards and the council even stronger. We started that last week when Board Chair Anna Harrison came to our council table and gave a brilliant 15-minute presentation of not just what's happening at the Cromwell Community Board, but what's happening with Cromwell as a whole. Because we have tended to be stuck in our lanes, this is council business, this is board business, and never the twain shall meet. I think that's been wrong of us. We need to utilise the boards more to feed into council, realistically, whether or not this goes ahead, to say, hey, this is what's happening in our ward. This is because we've got, it's really hard for councillors in Cromwell to know what's happening in the Maniatoto, to know what's happening in the Cheviot, and the same for everyone around the place. So I think that this is an opportunity, and we've got some suggestions for what the boards might look like that have been engendered from talking to other communities and councils. But it's really a great opportunity for the boards to go, hang on, now, if there is going to be a brave new world, what is the role of the boards? Because at a very, very basic level, if we do not have the community boards, and I do not want to see that for a moment, but if we don't have them, we still need to hear from the community, and we will have unelected self-appointed groups come and tell us which way's up. I'd much rather the boards tell us which way's up, if that's okay. So that's my preamble. It's a long preamble, but this is the big topic, and it's a topic that we have control over. We're going into an annual plan. We're in an annual plan process where so much of the control is taken away from us. This is something that we can work together, I think, to have a look at what might be the future for the council and the district moving forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. Just going to go over. So I'm here today to talk about the why, and then I'm going to hand over to Saskia, and she's going to talk more about what it could mean in the future and how we do through that process. So as
was stated was that council needs a financial strategy. So back in 2015, the legislation changed in 2014, and they brought in the 30-year infrastructure strategy and a 10-year financial strategy. And that was because we needed to be thinking long-term for infrastructure, and we needed to be understanding the intergenerational equity issues between different generations of ratepayers. So we need to be looking long-term, and we need to be looking long-term from a financial perspective of all our areas of the financial strategy. Not just your rates, but your development contributions, your fees and charges, your debt levels, and corresponding reserve levels. So at the moment, we are only including the mandated services in their infrastructure in the infrastructure strategy, and that is the 3 waters and roading. So the piece of infrastructure, like community facilities, property, the pools, etc., they're sitting outside of that infrastructure strategy at the moment, and therefore the decisions around financial strategy are actually made at the ward level in the first instance, and we've got to pull that up so that we can actually manage this financial situation, not just for the next 10 years, the next 50, because those assets that are at the level at the moment, they are facing the same issues as the rest of our infrastructure. We know that they're ageing. We know that there's usage issues. We know that the costs of insurance, etc., is rising all of the time. We are subject to increased national standards with earthquake-prone strengthening. The reality is that they're not any different than our other infrastructure assets, and that's why we need to be picking that up and bringing it into the council and actually having the financial strategy that goes across everything, so that we can actually manage that rates increase and be ahead of it. Actually understand what's happening 10, 20 years out and what's going to be required. As we've already mentioned, we're going to reach our debt levels, and yes, we can go through a credit rating to get around that. At the moment, the LTP draft numbers have got a $400 million 3 waters program. We cannot borrow 400 million, even if we increase their debt levels. It's just not sustainable. In there is no repayment, so at the moment we're just growing. So we need to be thinking about that. That when financial strategies came in, we recognised at that stage that that previous generations had consumed the assets, but they hadn't necessarily paid the true cost of that asset. And so, like depreciation funding, we're not actually fully funding our depreciation on those for infrastructure services at the moment. We're certainly not ahead of the game with things like community facilities and pools. This will allow us to look more strategically across the district in terms of the level of service for community. And you'll see that when we get to the reserve accounts further through. Me and Tim mentioned that what's going on in Cromwell with the Memorial Hall, the district can't afford for that to be rolled out in other areas. We've got to look across and look at the facilities that we've got and make sure that we have what's affordable and sustainable going forward. That's all the requirements of the financial strategy. And of course, we've already mentioned there is efficiency, reduced administration, and I think the big one is the improved transparency. So because of when we get through the rating, the 18% that's sitting with wards is inefficient in terms of recording it. It's also really difficult to try and explain that to your ratepayer, because you've got this small chunk but it's actually split out quite at more of a granular level. And there can be some areas in the rating policy that we actually we apply differentials to. So it just cascades down into a very complicated model, which is very hard to explain that to the ratepayer. And we've certainly experienced that through this end plan process. Okay. So land sales, that's a big issue, but obviously because any proceeds need to be taken into account in the long-term financial strategy. We know that endowment land has to be, if it's sold, it has to be used for the purpose of the endowment. Okay, so if the purpose of the endowment is for the betterment of borough funds, then we can actually use that in the case of something like Cromwell. We can actually use that for expenditure in the new borough. So it wouldn't necessarily need pets and moorings and family land because it would be the original borough. We can use that for something like a water upgrade or a wastewater upgrade. So there would be a flow-on effect to the district by using those land sales, if that's what it was to happen. Freehold land, or it's now called fee simple, we all know it as freehold land. We're not talking about reserve land here at all because there's different categories of that. That can be used for a purpose across the district. So we do have on SharePoint now all of your land holdings. So it has the endowment land, but then it also has all of your land holdings, including your reserves, etc. We also have a hard copy here that people can have a work and take a look at.
Just might add to that if I can, Susan, because it became quite a topic in the delegations discussion, which the delegations were never about this. Neither is continuing distributisation about this, but it is one of the aspects that has to be recognised. Essentially, there's the freehold land that the council can decide to develop and sell, and realistically do what it wants to do with it. There is endowment land that must be used in the boroughs. Obviously, Cromwell some people in Cromwell got pretty upset about the land. If the endowment land says it must be used in the borough of Cromwell, at the moment, under the way we've always done things, then it would be up for the Cromwell Community Board to decide what happens to that land. Those land sales, but also under that same traditional way of doing things, those land assets, if the board wanted to, if the council wanted to, can't be applied to our two biggest cost drivers being Three Waters and roading because they're distritised. If we do districtise, it will make the option, I underline the word option, available to the council with input from the boards to say, actually, make an example, we know we're going to do a whole lot of work or indeed rebuild or make a new Cromwell drinking water plant. It could be a conversation with the community to say Cromwell land could be used to pay for some of that, which would benefit everybody in the district, but it would also benefit the people in Cromwell because everybody's rates would be lower. But it doesn't mean A goes straight to B. There would be a lot of steps in between before that could happen if we do districtise. It doesn't immediately mean that the council can go, cool, we're taking that, we're doing that. And just to emphasise, we couldn't take Cromwell endowment land to build a bridge in the Minnetonka because it's not within the borough. But it's really important to know that even if we do districtise, there would then need to be, the LTP would need to put that up as a consideration. There would absolutely have to be consultation under a significance engagement policy. In that instance, let's flip it. If there was Vincent land, we were looking at selling to do some Vincent work, the board would be hugely involved. Because I don't see, when it comes to the boards aren't just submitters, they're partners. So I just want to make that really clear in terms of what we were saying.
We do often use the Cromwell example because they have a lot of land, but Vincent does have endowment land, and we do need a new wastewater treatment plant potentially. So, yeah, it's applicable right across the boards, not just in relation to the Cromwell.
So the question could be if a new Alexandra wastewater plant was going to cost everybody in the district an extra $70 on their rates a year, but there was some land here that was utilised to reduce that to $80 a week, you're still helping people in Alexandria, still benefiting the people in Alexandria. It's a question of whether or not be comfortable with it also benefiting everyone else in the community.
So in the case, just to put it in context, in the case of the RTP numbers at the moment, there's 110 million in for Cromwell's 3 water projects. So that's why it's really important that we have the overarching financial strategy in place at a council level, because we haven't got the debt that we can, the capacity and the debt levels to actually fund that. So we need to be looking at other streams of ability to fund that program.
Can I just ask a question on that? So, and this is because I've heard this from the community. I've said, well, if we can't afford it, then we don't do it.
Yeah.
What happened?
Okay.
And that's what I think is important for.
Yeah, there's a couple of factors in there. So one is whether what's being seen to be coming our way at the moment is going to continue to be that way, particularly in the wastewater space. The requirements may be lessened. We just need to wait and see, but until they are, we need to plan for what's there. The current government's, from what we can see and understand of the current government's model, will be putting up alongside every other council in the area of water plans, and those water plans will show we can't afford it. And it's quite easy. And then they go, well, there's going to be greater efficiency if you join forces and essentially hand your water assets over to a regional council control organisation or something like that, which has Watercare in Auckland has, be able to get a higher debt ceiling over a longer period of time, which is going to solve that debt problem. But we're an awful long way away from that happening. And it's not even clear what the process is going to be for that to happen yet. But essentially where we were 3 or 4 years ago. But the only problem is the big day is coming at us a lot faster, as we've seen with the rates rises that we've got this year. But we're not ignorant at the LGNZ level where I sit, or even around the council table too, the total unaffordability of what we're being told to do. And it's also, and you see when the slide comes up about earthquake strengthening. It's absurd, and there is a agreement from LGNZ, which is in front of the government at the moment, that instead of saying all your walls have to be done up to a standard where they're going to be safe, put a bloody sign on the door saying if you want to come and see Romeo and Juliet tonight and there's an earthquake, you're probably going to be in trouble. Up to you, mate. It's not quite the big term, but that's, for goodness sake, surely it must be the more sensible option than bankrupting and us, or indeed closing a whole lot of quite useful walls that you're not going to be able to maintain for the 5 days a year that they use. I hope it helps. But yeah, it's
Yeah, and I think that's important for the public to know. That's where we're at.
But at the end of the day, the government makes the rules and we've got no choice but to obey. And in the drinking water space, when the changes came in the Water Services Act in November 2021, the changes were in effect supported by all the parties. National and ACT voted against it on one point, which was the 1 + 1 equals a water supply. They thought that should be 30 or 50. But other than that, the basic, you need to get multi-barrier protection in your water supplies for councils, they all supported it. So that's not going to change. The into the distance view that we are going to have to dispose of all our wastewater to land, that money. So.
I think that's the most challenging part at the moment, is waiting on what that legislation looks like while having to come up with a plan, if it remains the same. And I guess reiterating to our community that we are doing everything that can be done in the background to find efficiencies and find savings and find ways to work together, be it with other councils or other entities or other groups, to make sure that we're getting the best value we can, but unwilling to compromise on things that relate to people's health and wellbeing. With some things that we are just going to have to do.
Reserve accounts, we've had some legal advice, and we certainly can roll up reserve accounts into a district level. So the way that we account for them at the moment is unique to us. So it's not an issue. If we go to the graph, you'll see at the beginning, the dark blue is Cromwell, and that where that falls off is where we've used the Cromwell reserves for the Cromwell Memorial Hall. So about 2025 on that graph, it's kind of looking not too bad. As in everybody's pretty similar. But you can also see that the orange bars here, that is the mini toto, and that relates to excuse me, earthquake prone strengthening. And this is another reason why, I mean, this feeds into our financial strategy, and we need to make sure, because we haven't got the same level of reserves anymore after the Cromwell Memorial Hall build, is that we need to be managing that across the district, and we can't, there is no funds to be actually borrowing from another ward, which has happened in the past, to do something that's specific to the ward base. We've got to look at that across the board in a whole entire debt profile. It's a good example of why why we're going through this process. Rating impact. So just to give the context there, in 2015, and this is in 2015 dollar terms, so we know that the program is much more expensive now, and the requirements are a lot greater. But in 2015, when we distributised the 3 waters, the Vincent community's rates decreased. Clyde went up, and the reason for that is that we had a near 10. We had the first stage of the Clyde wastewater project in there, so it was in some form accounted for through waters distributisation. So you can see the significant decreases to rates for Alexandra and particularly Onika. And in this case, it was Cromwell, both in Pisa and Cromwell get increased. Then move on to the roading. Once again, this is what Newton was talking about before. You can see the mini toto, the dotted line, the dotted red line is the distributisation. So certainly the Teviot and a mini toto rates decreased at that stage, and that's in terms of costs for 2019-20, so it's updated.
Have you done this in relation to the balance of, so excluding Virgin and, or just have you done this in relation to what the balance of things to come over if distributisation is?
It's coming out next.
Yeah.
But before we come to that, I just want to really emphasise that when we come to the next 2 slides, the last 2 slides are crucial, because the next 2 slides will show, gee whiz, this ward will wind up having an increase, or this ward, the first one actually shows one ward doing quite badly over. The second one kind of ties that up. But it's so important to not look at today's context without remembering yesterday, because if we're going to talk about fairness, is that fair? Fairness is such a subjective term.
Just go back again. So just keep this in mind, Vincent.
Keep it in mind, that's 2015 ones.
Okay. So what we're going to talk about now is basically around the impact of distributising the balance of that 18%.
Next 2 slides.
Yeah, it's the bottom 2 slides that we were talking about. So this is the 18% that we're referring to. So currently with the draft annual plan figures, we've got 9.43 million sitting in ward distribution. So we move. Now this is trying to tie up our activity streams to a grants, a rating policy. You'll see in there that grants, so on the left-hand side is their activities, on the right-hand side is how they're rated for, what we call the normal rates charge. You'll see on the left-hand side that grants is in red. It is anticipated that your grants pots and your promotions pots would remain at community board level, so they're not in the scope of this distritisation modelling that we've done. That's just an indication of how we rate. So on the left, we do it by rating unit basis, and on the right, we do it by capital value. This slide here is just to reiterate what's in the scope of the distritisation modelling. It is not talking about anything to do with the level of service. It's to make sure that we have consistent costs. So because we've got costs in the model for the likes of the potential move of the museum in Cromwell to the new building, because we've had to take that into account, we're making sure that we take into account anything to do with museums so that we are consistent in the modelling. Does that make sense? Okay, so for Vincent, we've included the 82,000 for central stories. We've also included the OPA pool. So you'll see the 82,000 is in scope. The 39,000 balance is out of scope. So that's saying that pot would still remain with the GP. Right. So this is the CapEx that's currently in the plan for the 18% that relates to awards. This is what's in the plan, and the yellow is for the Vincent Community Board. You can see it's quite buildings split out at 7.5 million. Now that includes the museum and college, two museums, but the big expenditure in Clyde. Once again, that's all impacting financial strategy. When we're looking at distritisation, this here is the activities that make up the 18%. You can see that 3/4 of that is in the recreation and culture charge. So your community buildings, your parks and museums, swimming pools, is all in the recreation and culture charge, which is different for every board. Now we'll go to the next one. This is a summary. So an average impact per rating unit per LTP year. So on an annual basis, if we're looking at Vincent, you'll be paying $38 more a year per rating unit than what you currently, if we didn't distribute. Right. Go to the next one. This is splitting out the years, and you can see we have ring-fenced Vincent and then ring-fenced the district rate. Now, these are all done on draft LTP figures, and of course we know that we've updated the annual plan and that hasn't necessarily rippled through to the LTP. The yellow line on there is the distritised rate, and Vincent is the lightest blue bar graph here. So at times, you can see at the end of the 10 years here, pretty much in line with the distritised rate being.
Can I just check, Susan, the previous slide said it was $38 difference, but I see in year one that it's $6 difference. What am I mixing?
It's an average.
That's the average, of course.
The first slide is the average over the 10 years divided by 10 years. So it's per average per year.
Yeah. Yep, gotcha.
For the 10 years.
Yeah, and by the end of the 10 years, there's virtually nothing in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
So I think that's really worth looking at, is that you know, it is very minimal. $2. in that year 10. So, and that's to do with the works program and where it is at the moment. So, you know, depending what happens to the RTP process, if something came forward, then that would mean that you're probably on the districtised rate benchmark. Okay.
And to harp on, and I know I am, but when people go, well, $38 difference, that's not fair. Take it back to 2015 when it was how much was the benefit to Vincent? It was,
387.
yeah, it was.
That was for Alex, and then of course, Overfell was 869.
Yeah, so
Average. So your 38 is comparable to your 385, but in dollar terms, the program back at 385, it would be double then. So this here is, this is trying to show that why we need to be thinking as a council and why we need to include all of these efforts into our infrastructure strategy and our financial strategy. We've had discussions with the likes of the Mini Toto, and they believe that we've got some point in time very soon that they need to be looking at replacing their It's a council run pool at the moment. Now, there is not the funding sitting there because it's not included and hasn't been, we haven't been rate funding for depreciation for a long enough period of time for that to have built up a pot replacement. And we know that the expense of replacing things has gone up significantly. If that was a council activity, we need to include it in the infrastructure strategy and the financial strategy and actually be planning for that outcome. This modelling here, we've included the Tibet Valley pool to see what it would do for the district. So at the moment, it's a community run pool. And they have, obviously they've done fundraising for the capital expenditure, but ongoing, once again, bring it into the infrastructure strategy, we need to be, that's a community that has obviously raised a lot of money, but they've got no mechanism to turn around and actually be able to fund a depreciation fund, thinking about the future and how they can keep on top of what needs to happen. And even from an R&M perspective, your community funders don't generally fund operational costs, they'll fund the capital cost. So we've just modelled this to see what the impact would be if the council was to take on that and increase the level of service across the board. So it's just an example, and you can see from a district perspective, it doesn't make much of a difference at all. That's the yellow line is what was there before. The black dashes with the Tibet Valley pool in with some depreciation and staff costs. So from a district perspective, actually bringing that into this fold, it doesn't actually make too much of a difference, but it actually would make, there's no mechanism for that pool to, you can't put the pool charge up to $40 a swamp, depreciation, etc.
And at a council table level, it just seems fair that council has a pool in each ward. That's an anomaly that's been created in some regards by the structure we have. Roxburgh at the moment is going great. It's got a beautiful brand new pool, but get it 10 years, get it 15 years, when things start to break, they're going to be cap in hand to funders who don't generally fund obvious. They've also got, we learned, I was incredulous yesterday, but because they don't have qualified trained lifeguards, every person under the age of 18 has to have a parent with them. Now, there's two things to that. I know what I was doing at 13 and 18 at a swimming pool. I didn't want mum and dad there with me. But there was an anomaly where there was a young girl who was 16 who had a baby who couldn't take her baby to the pool without grandma coming. He was only 16. So there's these actual right now factors that, they talk of, one volunteer, one staff member, not coming. And so the committee, today I'm at the poll again, it's going to get tiring really, really quickly. So I just think it's one that we need to look at as a consideration. I can't think of others, but that's.
On that basis, and it applies to Vincent as well as the rest of the community, rest of the districts. In the event that let's say, for example, we choose to use money from endowment land to build something in Alex, I don't know what that would be, but let's say we do need. The rest of the district would be paying.
If it was districtised.
If it was districtised.
Yeah, if it was not districtised, it's the status quo, the water.
Yeah.
Correct, but. So let's say our board here decided that we wanted something, whatever that is, I'm not.
New playground.
New playground. And it's, if it was districtised, how was that going to,
Okay.
how does that work?
So the board in a year's time, coming into the LTP. So say we go ahead with districtisation in September, coming into the LTP, the board goes, we need to completely replace the Pioneer Park playground. So no, let's not do that. Let's build a new playground somewhere else. We need brand new playgrounds in Brooks. So the board would then have to come to the council and go, here's our list of priorities for you in the LTP. We really want a new playground. Now the council would have to look at that and go, we know everything else that's needed across the district. And it may be in an overall sense, or it may be in our playground sense. So you're actually going to be you're advocating for your playground to get ahead of a playground in Roxburgh. And actually they took a playground out of their LTP yesterday, because their new plan yesterday, felt they couldn't afford it. So that then, if the council said no, the board might go, well, look, I tell you what, we've got some endowment land that we would quite like you to sell to get that playground for us. The council would then have to look at that and go, yes, that would work, but we still have to think about the depreciation and everything else. Are we willing to do it on those new terms? And I think that would be the process, but we're not there yet. So that would be how, do you think that would be how it would operate?
Yeah, but I mean, under a districtised model, the district would pick up the running cost of that playground, the maintenance and that. What would have to be factored in if the answer was no, we can't afford to build one, then the question would be, well, can we afford to operate one? And so that could be another discussion point with the community. Could be a targeted rate, I don't know, but all that has to be put into the round, so it's discussed in a collective way as opposed to individual decisions that just happen.
I think we could look backwards at an example too, is the half mile. The board made the decision to cut the trees down, and the board is lumped with fixing that, putting the ground back to how it should be. Now, to my view, the Walden Conflict Control Group said in the whole district, that's your worst place. It was just really unfortunate for Vincent that it fell here. If it's the worst place in the whole district, why isn't the whole district paying to repatriate that ground? Which is what would happen under districtisation. And then the next worst place in the district might be in the Maniatoga, might be the Manaborough, I don't know. But the whole district would have the ability, one after the other, to deal with these things as much as we can, rather than suddenly, bang, the Vincent ward is getting clobbered for something that is the worst in the district. How's that feel?
Equally, like if there was to be a pool upgrade or something that needed to happen, that would be a district cost, district rate, spread across to everybody. So if there's expenditure there for infrastructure, then there's a big spread across the district. And let's face it, I mean, people in the district do use the different pools.
And I presume by going down the districtisation route, if a ward was absolutely adamant that they wanted something that was not going to fall within that ambit, they could still have a targeted rate. Is that possible?
Well, I would imagine, well, it's all capital, where it's probably would have to come up through the council.
Yeah. Just provided it went through all of that,
Yeah.
and let's just say Alex said we want this and we're prepared to pay for it, excluding the rest of the district. That still is a possibility. It's not excluded.
We just heard from Grant today, you know, a lot of people he believes are saying Riverside Park shouldn't go ahead. Well, if, and I'm not, probably shouldn't use that kind of thing out as an example, but if council was sitting down with its LGP next year, when we can't afford to do stage 2, then that's where the board could step in and go, no, you know what, actually, we believe you should, and ask the people whether we should get a target rate of $5 per Vincent rate part of it with. That's exactly, I think, would be how that would work. It could work. Yeah.
It's just that it doesn't exclude it.
I
No,
don't
but
see
what
what.
we're doing is looking at everything across the board with the debt levels and the reserve levels and working out, like if it's not affordable, what we would have to do to make it affordable and be bringing that back as well, this is the reality, and we still do a targeted rate, but we would be looking at that realistically for everything else that is in.
But it just wouldn't be excluded completely. I understand there's a process in that.
Yeah.
We haven't, the policies haven't been written, obviously, but I think that would be something in the writing of the policy that should be written.
It was kind of to Saskia's part here, and we know that we've really labored the why, and we want to make sure that we give you an opportunity to talk about how, and we haven't got that all nutted out at the moment, and that's where we need your feedback and what's so. If you're comfortable with the why, we can move on.
Just before we do start this particular part of the workshop, just to note, future conversation around the Roxburgh pool, those numbers are probably a little bit on the light side. If it was to be distributised, that is the ultimate decision come September, and that we hear from the Roxburgh folk that they want to progress with this as a conversation in the LGP. We would obviously update all those numbers. It's really just for illustrative purposes today. So yes, so next section. So as being stressed by Mayor Tim, this is not an exercise in getting rid of community boards. You guys have got a really critical role in this community. In fact, it's enshrined in legislation under Section 52 of the Local Government Act. So that is the particular part of the legislation as it pertains to community boards, to represent and act as an advocate for the community, to consider important all matters referred to it by the TA. And I think that's really something we need to nut out, that the how that would work in practice, and really starting today with the Vincent Community Board, what you would like to see and what good would look like. And as it says there in the legislation, maintain an overview of services. So again, you know, you've got the finger on the pulse of what's happening in the community to know what's going on. If, you know, there's a park that's hasn't been watered and stuff. You guys actually by and large hear about it before council staff do. Prepare an annual submission to the TA for expenditure within the community. Going to Mayor Tim's point earlier, we see it at this stage as more than that, around actual partnership, rather than you just being a submitter. And in fact, in all the good work that Sarah and Wayne have done in preparation for this conversation and the conversations to come, there is a local authority near us actually that got a wee bit of trouble over this particular section in terms of how they were treating one of their community boards, and we've given it really the manner and due respect that it deserved. And as you already do, communicate with organisations and interest groups and undertaking other responsibilities that are delegated. So early on, Susan did indicate that at this stage, the grants, apart from those particular ones that she pointed out, would be still delegated to this board. So anyway, it's said it in legislation, it's really a question around the house. So could you go to the next slide? So I really should actually have Sarah presenting this, because I know she's done a lot of thinking in this. So Sarah and Wayne have put together sort of 2 slides on potential ideas for how the boards would operate in its future world if it does go ahead. So obviously to develop your relationships and communicate with key organisations, which you already do, but that could be ramped up. There could be more support from staff in terms of how that looks. Already started is point 2, update council and community board matters. As Mayor Tim said, already had the first of the chairs come to council and present very broadly on the issues within Cromwell. So being a Vincent member, I am really a great person. I'm really looking forward to when the chair of this board comes and talks about my particular area. So that's really cool that's happening. Make submissions to council matters relating to the ward, especially through the annual plan and LTP processes. So again, we can really think about the how and that. We do not just see very late in the piece the board would make a written submission, that there would be conversations as it went through. One of the ideas that Sarah come up with is we do have portfolios at the council level, so like roading and community services, and a food for thought. Whether similarly within our community boards there was members that had areas that they particularly were across, such as the roading or the museum and arts, that you were the touch point for in terms of some of those strategic conversations. Next slide there. So we have maybe I won't spend all that time going through because we really want to hear you, but some other ideas there really around the role of the community board and really that status of the community board being lifted up. Another idea is around particular projects, take the Riverside Park, potentially that there could be a role in the future where an elected member is actually part of the project group conversations, or really a liaison on those projects. So that's just some of the brainstorm Sarah has done, but really I know that you've just been presented a whole lot of information around sort of the modelling and how that looks. We really want to start to understand from you what you would like to see and how this board, what's important to this board, what the future might look like for this board. So open it up to discussion.
I think there are some real food for thought comments in there, and I'm pleased to see that this board's connection to our communities has been highlighted and celebrated. And as the Mayor said, it's really important that people feel like they have access, I guess, to decision makers within reason. But so many of the conversations that I have, and I know it's the same for the others around the table, don't come as part of a formal process. They become, you see someone at the hockey sideline and they want to have a chat, or somebody's coming in to get a new golf club, or somebody sees you in the supermarket, which is why Martin's wife doesn't attend the supermarket with him ever. And I think it's important that we be able to maintain those connections, because that's how our community feel that they can engage the best. And often it's something that could have been done by them as a service request or whatever it be, but that ability to feel like you have some ownership and some say in what's happening at council by raising something with a person that you elected or maybe didn't vote for, but see and can then, follow your issues up. I think that that's important to maintain, and I'm pleased that that's been highlighted, that this is not a drive to get rid of those connections to our communities, because this is one of the biggest geographical area councils in New Zealand, and the idea that 10 or 11 or 12 people are going to get around the whole place and make communities feel like they're heard and have a say would be incredibly challenging. Thoughts from others on what we have seen so far?
I guess it is pretty fair. At the moment, the community as a whole is hurting. And I think that needs, and that's acknowledged. I mean, it's acknowledged around this table and from council as well. I agree we need to be accessible, because quite often people don't want to pick up a phone or do anything. You might get quite a few texts and things about things, but being able to see people face to face and have a conversation does generally smooth things over and gives people a better understanding. Yeah, I think community boards need to be more visible as a whole. More visible. So, see that.
Other initial thoughts, so we more opportunities, I know we're just.
Yeah, we'd like to see more opportunities. I'm pleased that both Peter and yourselves and the mayor raised the idea that running 5 sets of books for one business or organisation seems on the face of it ludicrous. It's an enormous amount of staff time. It's an enormous amount of auditing time that we also pay for. And while I recognise that there's not necessarily going to be monetary savings in terms of the price that we have to pay to do our accounts and our annual reports and all of that sort of thing, but surely the idea that there would be a lot of time savings and efficiencies, and many of these submissions that are coming through today and tomorrow have asked this council to find efficiencies. And I think we need to recognise that you've come to us with a pretty big one.
Well, it's also alongside it, as Susan said, it's the transparency, and that might not be the right word, but when you get your rates, when you've got award services charge and you've got this and you've got that and everything else, like, I still struggle after 7.5 years here to explain to people why it works like that. It's just as complex as a Russian novel, and it doesn't need to be.
Especially when they have the differentials as well.
Yeah.
So you're only paying 0.00917, 5% of the award services charge. What does that even mean?
Yeah, it's complicated. Just following up, Tony, we're the 4th largest in geographical area, CODC.
Pretty big.
Yeah, and 2 of the ones that are bigger than us have massive national parks in it, so I haven't done the maths specifically. But yeah, we're big. We could not, I know as mayor trying to get around as a full-time job, getting around everywhere, still doesn't allow me to be as close to the community as I live in Vincent, so I'm probably right here, but there's no way I can know what's going on in the money total like the team I'm going to see this afternoon. No chance, no matter how hard I try. So it's just crucial.
Recognising that we don't have to make any decisions for that.
No.
As the probably a good thing. I guess there seems to be the indication from board that would like to hear more and understand more about. I think it's been highlighted that some of the numbers for Vincent will be more than we've paid, than we would pay if we continued in the same vein, but recognising also that this board has benefited from past decisions the district has.
I think it's important to just to reiterate what Mayor Paul said, is that we can make a decision for today, but our job isn't necessarily about making decisions for today. We do have to think out, and that's the 30-year infrastructure and the 10-year financial strategy planning. If we only make a decision for today, then we're actually not doing our communities much service at all. We do need to think out, and sometimes we have to make decisions that aren't palatable for today. So.
And I think with that too, I totally agree, Tracy, but it's been interesting going around the drop-in sessions because they have often drifted into this space and people are interested in it. And I haven't once gone through this kind of conversation with people in different areas around the district where they've gone, no, that makes no sense. They've all gone, oh, that makes sense. And a lot of the people that I've spoken to have been newcomers to the district. And in the time I've been mayor, 25% of the people who live here now didn't live here when I became mayor 7.5 years ago. And the constant thing I hear from them is, I don't understand why we're having this conversation. We're one district now. I think sometimes we get entrenched in the way we've always done things, but for outsiders coming in and going, why are you even having this conversation? It's been fascinating.
Okay, so yes, there will be more opportunities to discuss this further. Obviously, we know it's been our first conversation and you might want to reflect on it. We're more than happy to take questions outside of a meeting, but we will actually discuss this again on Monday when we meet. So what we're going to do on Monday is we're going to take away what we've heard from you today, and we're going to put this workshop into a formal paper. So apologies, it will come out as a late paper, probably Thursday to Friday, depending on when we get to that. And so come Monday, an opportunity really for the board to have another conversation and also to reflect at that stage. You don't necessarily need to make a decision, but the board will discuss whether or not we want to put in sort of a formal written feedback on the board's views. So there'll be that process, which in order to make our deadline, which was the decision by council, be the 31st of July. So we are asking if boards, once you've obviously had conversations amongst yourselves, we do want to hear your views. If it's contrary to the proposal, and we really want you to speak up. So that'd be the 8th of July. This will be all on the paper on Monday. That timeframe is to enable us to really consider your feedback and that decision paper for council. So we heard from community boards loud and clear around the delegations is that we didn't give you guys enough opportunity to input, that it felt a bit rushed, and that essentially with the written feedback from some boards, because of the timing, the paper isn't because it's written. So there will be that opportunity for this board. Also on the 26th of June, we're going to invite community board chairs to a council workshop on this matter, just to talk about initial thoughts, concerns, questions from the board. So again, on Monday, and your only time or during presentation of the paper, opportunity to start formulating what you'd like your chair to raise there. So now assuming that following all the community board engagement and the decision come 31 July is that council decides to have a conversation with the community. We're still working this up, but there will be engagement opportunities for this board if you so wish during the formal process for the month that will be out consulting with the community. So there'll be more to come on that. So I do encourage you to reflect on the material you've had today, to come together as a board and to have your voices heard. So that's us for the moment. Any final questions for us four down as end of the table?
Monday's conversation.
Perfect. Yes, and I'll try not to get the paper out too late. So you can
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Thank you to all those hundreds of people who would have been no doubt watching online.
That nine.
Nine.
That's pretty good. Okay.
How many of them are? They're all community members, aren't they? And Tony. Perfect. And we will now have a short adjournment while we all go and put on our alphas and our boots and get the gardening gloves for the first session.